The supermarket was almost empty that night. Only the soft hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of old lights filled the silence. Shelves were stacked with cans, bread, and boxes, but the air felt heavy, as if the whole building carried a secret. Behind the counter stood a tall human cashier, his arms strong from years of lifting, his face calm but sharp. He had worked this shift many times before, yet tonight something felt different. He could sense it without knowing why. The sliding doors opened with a low hiss, and into the quiet store walked a blue-skinned alien woman. Her steps were slow, her shoulders slightly bent as if she carried a heavy weight that no one could see. At her side, a small child clung to her hand, silver hair shining faintly under the flickering lights. The child's big eyes moved across the shelves, not with excitement, but with hunger, with longing. They were not from Earth, but their faces showed emotions every human could understand: fear, exhaustion, and shame. The mother walked carefully, glancing left and right, as if worried someone might be watching. She picked up a loaf of bread, holding it close, then added a small carton of milk and a few vegetables. Her hands shook slightly, not from the cold, but from the thought of what would happen when she reached the counter. The child whispered something in their strange alien tongue, but the mother only smiled weakly. The smile of a parent trying to be strong when she had nothing left to give. The human cashier watched them from the counter, his eyes following their every move. He saw the way the mother hesitated before picking even the cheapest items. He noticed how the child looked at the food not with greed but with hope, and deep inside, something stirred in him. A quiet anger at the unfairness of it all. Still, he said nothing, waiting, watching, letting the moment unfold. At last, the woman approached the counter. She placed the bread, the milk, and the vegetables on the scanner with careful hands. Her voice was soft when she said, "This is all, please." The cashier scanned each item. The machine beeped, and the numbers glowed on the small screen. The total was not high by human standards, but the woman froze as if struck by lightning. Her face grew pale, her lips trembled. She reached into her worn bag and pulled out a few coins and a small card. She looked at the total again, and her eyes filled with panic. The child tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Mama, is it enough?" The woman's chest rose and fell quickly, her breath sharp. She shook her head slowly, then with shaking fingers she reached for the loaf of bread. "I will return this," she whispered, her voice cracking like broken glass. Her hand touched the bread, ready to slide it back across the counter. But before she could, the human cashier placed his hand over hers, firm but gentle. The room seemed to stop moving. The sound of the humming lights faded. The woman looked up, shocked, her silver eyes wide. The cashier's voice was calm, low, carrying weight. "No, this stays." She shook her head quickly. "I cannot pay. I must return." But the cashier only leaned forward, his strong frame towering yet steady. "You do not return food for your child," he said, each word sharp like steel. The child looked from the mother to the human, their small voice whispering again. "Mama?" The woman's lips parted, but no words came out. Her hand was still under his, her body frozen in disbelief. She tried to pull back, but the cashier did not let go. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his own card, and slid it across the reader. The machine beeped again, confirming payment. The groceries were no longer hers to return. They were already covered. The silence in the store deepened, heavy with something unspoken. The mother gasped, her free hand moving to her chest. Her eyes glistened with tears, but they did not fall. The child looked at the bag of food as if it were treasure, pure and rare. The cashier pushed the bag gently across the counter toward them. His eyes locked on the mother's, steady and unshaken. "Take it," he said. "Feed your child." The woman shook her head in disbelief. "But why?" "You do not even know us." The cashier's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Because it is right." For a moment, time seemed to hold its breath. The mother looked down at the bag, then at her child, then back at the human. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "We will never forget this." And the child, clutching their mother's hand, whispered in a voice barely heard, "Humans are different." The words hung in the air like fire. The cashier said nothing, but deep in his chest he felt the weight of what had just happened. Something more than kindness, more than charity, had been set in motion. Something dangerous, in a galaxy that did not understand such acts. And though he could not know it yet, that single choice would echo far beyond the walls of this small store. The sliding doors closed behind the alien woman and her child, leaving the store wrapped in silence again. She held the bag tightly, as if it might vanish if she let go. Her long fingers trembling with every step, the child clutched her hand, looking up with wide silver eyes that shimmered like stars trapped in crystal. To them, this bag was not just food. It was survival. It was life. It was one more day together. The human cashier stood behind the counter, still watching them as they walked away. He felt a storm inside him, not of anger at her, but of anger at the world around him. For weeks he had seen aliens treated like shadows, people turning away. From them, people mocking their hunger. Humans were not welcomed in many places either. But here, on this crowded colony hub, humans at least could work. Aliens like her had no chance, no rights, no protection. And now in front of him he had seen something no father should ever see. A mother ready to give up food because she could not pay, while her child starved. Beside her, the child stopped walking, turned back, and walked up to the counter again. The little one stared at the cashier, her voice soft, but carrying an echo that seemed to vibrate through the air. "Why did you do that, human?" she asked, tilting her head with a strange bird-like motion. The cashier crouched down so his eyes met hers, his large frame folding carefully so he would not tower over her. He smiled, though his chest was heavy. "Because no child should ever go hungry." The girl blinked, then whispered, "Mama says humans only think of themselves, but you are different." The mother's face tightened, her hand shaking as she pulled her daughter close. "Hush, Lyra," she said quickly, her accent carrying both music and fear. She looked around the store, eyes scanning the corners, the cameras above, the empty aisles that suddenly felt dangerous. She whispered, "You should not say such things, people are listening." The cashier raised an eyebrow, confused. "What do you mean, who cares if someone hears?" But before she could answer, a metallic hum filled the air. The surveillance orb in the ceiling shifted, its lens focusing sharply on the three of them. A faint red light blinked, recording every movement, every word, every breath. The cashier straightened, his jaw tightening. He had lived long enough on alien worlds to know what surveillance meant. He could almost feel unseen eyes behind that lens, cold and calculating. The mother clutched her child tighter, whispering in her own tongue now, her voice shaking with worry. The child pressed closer to her, still holding the grocery bag as if it were a shield. The human felt a rush of anger again, a heat rising through his chest. He turned and placed his body between the woman and the camera, blocking the view. In that moment, he became a wall, a shield of muscle and will. From a dark control room somewhere, above, alien officers watched the scene. One of them leaned closer to the monitor, his long fingers tightening around the console. "This is dangerous," he hissed. "Humans are not supposed to act this way." Another officer, older, with scarred skin, said quietly, "This is why the council fears them. They are not like us. They protect strangers as if they were blood." The younger officer shifted nervously. "Do we report him?" The elder shook his head. "Not yet. Let us see what this human does next." Back in the store, the mother whispered, "You should not risk yourself for us. They will notice. They always notice." The cashier lowered his voice, his eyes still fixed on the blinking red light. "Then let them notice," he said, his tone steady but edged with defiance. He turned to the child and handed her the bread again. "This is yours now. Eat it without fear." The girl's small hands reached out, clutching the loaf as if it were a treasure chest filled with hope. Her eyes sparkled, and for the first time in weeks she smiled. That smile hit the human harder than any punch ever could. It was pure, fragile, and full of trust. But trust was dangerous here. Outside the store, shadows moved, figures cloaked in dark uniforms, their eyes glowing. Faintly they spoke in low voices, sending reports to their command. The human has shown compassion, confirm? Confirmed, came the reply, cold and metallic. Mark him for observation. If he interferes again, take him. The alien mother could sense it too. Her people had instincts sharper than steel. She tugged at the human's sleeve, whispering, "They will come for you, you must leave us." But he did not move. His eyes still steady, his voice calm. "No one touches you while I am here." The mother's breath caught in her throat, her tears finally spilling down her blue cheeks. The child pressed her face into her mother's side, but she did not let go of the human's hand. For a moment, the three of them stood like a small island of defiance in the middle of the quiet store. The cashier knew he had crossed a line. He knew the authorities would not forget his choice, but he also knew something deeper, something that burned in his chest like fire. This was not weakness. This was not surrender. This was strength. The kind of strength that could not be bought. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the store, powerful eyes watched with growing unease. Because they had just witnessed something rare, something dangerous, something human. The night air outside the supermarket was heavy and cold, carrying the smell of metal and ozone from the ships that always came and went from the port. The tall blue-skinned woman walked slowly through the dim streets, her daughter's tiny hand still holding the grocery bag with all her strength. Each step seemed uncertain, as if the mother was afraid that soldiers would appear at any moment to take everything away. The little girl clutched the bread to her chest, her silver eyes glowing faintly, her small voice finally breaking the silence. "Mama, why did he help us? No one ever helps us. Not even our own people," she whispered, her tone a mix of wonder and confusion. The mother looked down at her child, her heart tightening with pain. She wanted to answer, but how could she explain something she herself did not understand? Her people had been proud once, but the war had broken them, scattered them across human colonies. The humans were supposed to be selfish, cold, dangerous. That was what she had been told. Yet tonight, in a lonely market aisle, one human had chosen to give instead of take. Her daughter smiled, a small, fragile smile that carried more hope than the mother had felt in years. "Maybe," the girl whispered again. "Maybe he is not like the others. Maybe. Humans are different." Behind them, a faint hum followed. The mother turned her head quickly, and her sharp eyes caught the glimmer of a drone in the shadows. It hovered silently, recording, its lens reflecting a dull red glow. Her breath caught, fear shot through her veins. She knew what this meant. The overseers had seen, they always saw. They did not allow kindness between species. They called it weakness, and weakness was punished. She pulled her daughter closer and whispered, "Do not look back, just walk." But the child, curious and unafraid, glanced again, her glowing eyes meeting the machine's lens. For a heartbeat, the drone paused mid-air, almost hesitant, almost alive. Then it darted upward, disappearing into the dark sky, carrying their secret with it. The mother knew the watchers would come soon. She also knew that man at the counter was now in danger because of what he had done. Back inside, the human cashier closed the register and shut down the lights. The store was empty now, but he could not shake the image of the child's eyes looking at him as if he were something more than a stranger. He had seen hunger before, he had grown up with it. Earth was not a place of plenty anymore. But there had been something different in that moment, as if the galaxy itself had been holding its breath. He locked the doors and stepped into the night, unaware that in the upper levels of the station, his face was being broadcast to alien officials. In a dark control chamber, alien officers argued in harsh whispers. One slammed his clawed hand on the console. "This is what we feared. Humans are unpredictable. They give without demand. They protect without reason. This is dangerous." Another officer leaned forward, studying the screen closely. "That child?" She reacted. "Did you see her eyes? They lit up when the human touched her hand. That is not normal." The room fell silent again, the weight of something unspoken pressing down on all of them. Finally, the elder officer spoke, his voice deep and slow. "We must watch him, not destroy him yet. There is something here the council will want to understand." The human walked the empty streets, his footsteps echoing against steel walls. He felt eyes on him, the kind of gaze that follows, like a shadow. He glanced up, but the drone was gone. Only the faint hum of distant engines filled the night. He clenched his fists, his muscles tense. He was used to being watched, used to being judged for being human in a galaxy that still feared his kind. But tonight was different. Tonight he had taken a risk, and he could not stop thinking about the blue-skinned woman and her child. He wondered if they had made it home safe, if they were eating now, if the little girl was still smiling as she held that loaf of bread. The mother and her daughter reached their small shelter, hidden in a shadowy corner of the city. It was nothing more than a rusted container with a blanket for a door, but inside it was warm compared to the cold outside. The child tore the bread and handed a piece to her mother. "He was kind, Mama, he saved us." The woman sat in silence, chewing slowly, tears mixing with the dry crust in her mouth. She looked at her daughter, saw the tiny spark of life return to her face. For the first time in many nights, she whispered a silent prayer. Not to the gods of her people, but to something else. Something she could not yet name. Above the station, far from their world of hunger and shadows, a council of alien leaders gathered. On a great screen, the image of the human cashier filled the chamber, his blonde hair glowing under the store lights. His hand placed firmly over the alien woman's. "This," said the elder officer, pointing at the frozen image, "is the danger we spoke of." The others shifted in silence, some with fear, some with curiosity. One voice finally asked, "Danger or salvation?" The elder's eyes narrowed. "We will find out soon enough." The human reached his small apartment, but he could not sleep. He kept hearing the little girl's whisper. "Humans are different." The words echoed in his mind, louder than the hum of the city, louder than his own doubts. He did not know that far above, powers beyond his understanding were already discussing his fate, and he did not know that by refusing to let a hungry child return her bread, he had started a chain of events that would shake the galaxy. A storm was coming, and he was standing in its center, high above the crowded colony streets. In a dark chamber filled with screens and humming machines, the overseers watched in silence. Dozens of glowing monitors showed the daily movements of thousands of beings, but one screen held their attention. It showed the human cashier leaning across the counter, his hand covering the trembling blue fingers of the alien woman. It showed the child clutching bread as if it were gold, and the way her silver eyes glowed with a strange light when the man spoke. One officer hissed, his voice sharp like broken glass. "Do you see it? This is what we warned them about. This is what happens when humans are allowed to live among us." Another officer leaned closer, his face covered in metallic scales, his long tongue flicking nervously. He acted without gain, without transaction, without demand. He gave freely. "That is their weapon," the elder officer growled, his voice echoing in the cold chamber. "Compassion, sacrifice, loyalty. Things our kind abandoned after the wars, things that could weaken the order we built down below." The mother sat in her small shelter, the child curled in her arms, crumbs of bread on her lap. She should have felt relief, but instead, fear clawed at her heart. She knew her people's rulers would not let this go. They would not forgive kindness shown across species lines. She whispered to her daughter in their own language, warning her never to repeat the words she had spoken in the store. But the girl only shook her head, whispering again, "Humans are different. He will save us. I saw it in him. I felt it." Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment. A faint light that pulsed like a star before fading. The human, alone in his small room above the store, sat by the window staring at the neon lights of the colony below. He thought of his own daughter on Earth, a little girl with brown hair and the same smile he had just seen in the alien child. He had lost her in the war, lost her to the cruelty of beings who saw humans as expendable. Maybe that was why he could not watch another child go hungry. Maybe that was why he had placed his hand on that bread and refused to let it go. His heart was heavy, but there was also a strange warmth inside him, a sense that he had done something that mattered. Still, he could not shake the feeling of being watched. as if unseen eyes were measuring every beat of his heart. In the control chamber, the younger officer spoke again. "We should report him now. If humans spread this weakness, it will infect others. It will spread like fire." The elder officer did not respond immediately, his long gaze fixed on the screen. He saw the human sitting in silence, staring into the night, and he whispered, "Fire can destroy, but it can also give light. Perhaps the council will want to use him, not erase him." The younger officer recoiled. "Use him? You would let that dangerous species influence our people." The elder's eyes narrowed. "Better to understand the flame before it consumes." The forest, meanwhile, the mother could not sleep. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every shadow made her heart race. She remembered the man's words. "No one touches you while I am here," and they echoed in her mind. She had never met anyone who would risk themselves for her, not since her world was destroyed. She wanted to believe her daughter's words, wanted to believe that maybe humans were different, but she also knew the overseers had eyes everywhere. And when they saw someone breaking the order, punishment always followed. The child stirred, whispering in her sleep, "He will help us, Mama. I know it." The mother brushed white strands of hair from her daughter's face, tears filling her glowing eyes. She looked at the bag of food, the bread half-eaten, the milk half-drunk. It was such a small thing, yet it felt like a miracle. And miracles, she thought bitterly, always came with a cost. Far away, deep in the government's fortress, the council gathered. Tall figures with cold eyes and heavy robes sat around a round table of black stone. The footage of the human filled the chamber. The moment his hand stopped the bread from being returned. The moment he said the words, "Take it. Feed your child." The counselors hissed and murmured, some calling it treason, others whispering of prophecy. One counselor, her voice like steel, said, "If the children believe in humans, our rule will not last. We must silence this before it grows." Another, calmer, replied, "Or perhaps we can use him. Bend this human to our will. Turn his gift into our weapon." Back in the quiet room above the market, the human finally closed his eyes. But even in his dreams, he could not escape the sound of that little voice, whispering to him through the silence, "Humans are different." He did not yet know, but that one sentence had already reached ears across the station. Whispers spread like fire, from the market, to the streets, to the hidden corners where the lost and hungry aliens lived. The story grew with every retelling. The human paid for the food, they said. The human gave without asking. And in a galaxy ruled by fear and control, such a story was more dangerous than any weapon. The night was not over. The watchers had marked their target. The mother held her child close, her heart torn between fear and hope. And the human, unaware of the storm forming around him, was about to step into a struggle much bigger than himself. A struggle that would test his strength, his courage, and his humanity, and the galaxy, silent and watching, waited for what he would do next. The next morning came with a gray light spilling through the cracks of the station's metal ceiling. The human cashier, whose name was Daniel, walked into the store as he always did, his heavy boots echoing on the cold floor. But something had changed inside him. He felt it with every step, like a weight pressing on his chest. The image of the alien mother and her little girl still haunted him. The way they clutched the bread, the way her eyes glistened, the way the child whispered, "Humans are different." The city was waking up, the streets filled with different species, some with scales, some with feathers, some with skin like stone. Most of them barely looked at the humans who worked the lowest jobs. Humans were tolerated but never respected, never trusted. They were outsiders in a galaxy that judged them as dangerous, reckless, too violent to be equal. Daniel had lived with that weight for years, and most days he ignored it. But today, after what he had done, he knew ignoring would no longer be possible. Inside the market, whispers traveled faster than any broadcast. "Did you hear? The human paid for the outcast mother's food. They say he touched her hand with no fear, no disgust. Maybe it is true, maybe they are not like us." The words moved like sparks in dry grass, spreading from mouth to mouth. Even the workers in the store looked at Daniel differently, some with quiet respect, others with anger. One alien customer spat near his feet, hissing, "You will bring trouble to us all." Daniel didn't answer. He just kept stacking cans on the shelf, his muscles working, his jaw locked tight. That evening, the mother returned with her child. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her shoulders seemed a little straighter. She carried the empty grocery bag back to the store, her steps slow and heavy. Daniel saw her coming and felt his chest tighten. Again, she placed the bag on the counter, her hands trembling. "I must return this. I cannot accept what I cannot pay." Daniel shook his head, his eyes hard but kind. "I told you yesterday, it is not a loan, it is a gift." The woman looked at him, her lips pressed together, her voice breaking. "You do not understand. If they see this, if they know you helped us, they will punish you. They will punish us." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low. "They already saw, and I am still here. So maybe they are not as powerful as they want us to think." The child looked between them, her silver eyes glowing faintly again. She placed her small hand on the counter. "He is not afraid, Mama. He is not like them. He is human." The other shoppers froze, staring at the girl as if she had spoken a forbidden word. One alien hissed, "Quiet your child before the overseers hear." But it was too late. The surveillance orb above the counter clicked louder than before, its red glow pulsing. The mother's breath caught. She pulled her daughter back, fear twisting her face. Daniel reached out, gently but firmly. "Don't silence her. Let her speak," he said, his voice steady. The girl's eyes glowed brighter, like tiny moons shining with hidden power. Everyone in the store stepped back, whispering in fear. Up in the control chamber, the officers leaned forward, their scaled faces lit by the red glow of the monitors. "This is worse than we thought," one muttered. "The child reacts to him, she feels something, it awakens her." The elder officer narrowed his eyes, his voice low and heavy. "Yes, it begins, the prophecy may be true." He turned to the others. "The humans carry the seed of resistance. If they spread their influence, our rule may fall." Another officer slammed his claw on the table. "Then we take him now, tonight before the story spreads further." But the elder raised his hand, his gaze cold. "No, not yet. We watch, we wait. The council must decide. The human may serve us, or he may destroy us." Back at the store, Daniel noticed more aliens. Watching him, some curious, some hostile. A group of rough-looking alien youths whispered near the entrance, their eyes burning with anger. One of them muttered, "Humans should not act above their station. He will pay for this." Daniel ignored them, but his instinct sharpened. His training from a war he wished to forget stirred in his blood. He finished bagging groceries, but his mind was already racing. If the overseers had seen, if they were watching him, then the woman and her child were in danger. And if they were in danger, he could not just stand aside, not again, not like before. The mother approached the counter once more, her voice softer, now almost broken. "Why do you help us? What do you gain?" Daniel looked at her, and for a moment he saw his own daughter's face in the girl's silver eyes. "I gain nothing," he said. "But I already lost everything once, I will not watch it happen again." The woman's lips parted, her voice trembling. "You lost a child, too." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, and if I can keep yours alive, maybe it will mean something." The girl squeezed his hand, her glow flickering brighter. "You will keep us safe," she whispered, almost as if she were certain. In that moment something invisible shifted in the air. It was not just kindness, not just pity. It was a bond forming, something deeper, and far above, in the hidden chamber. The officers saw it too. The elder officer leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "It has begun. The humans are dangerous, but perhaps they are also the only ones who can save us." The human did not hear those words. He only felt the small hand in his, the trembling trust of a child who believed in him. And for the first time in years, he began to believe in himself again. But outside, in the shadows, the watchers were already moving closer. And the struggle that had only just begun would soon pull him, the alien mother, and her child into a storm greater than any of them had ever faced. The story of the Human Cashiers Act did not stay in the small supermarket. By the time the station's artificial dawn lights glowed across the domes, whispers had already reached the lower decks. The markets, the repair bays, the crowded, sleeping halls of the alien refugees, all carried the same tale. The human paid, the human gave food, the human touched her hand without fear. For the blue-skinned mother, whose name was Solari, it felt like living inside a dream she could not understand. Her daughter, Lyra, repeated the words again and again. Humans are different. They are not like the overseers. They are not like those who laugh at us. The mother wanted to silence her, but every time she tried, she saw that glow in the girl's silver eyes, a glow that seemed to burn brighter with each retelling. And each time she remembered how the man, Daniel, stood like a wall between her and the cameras. She had lived her whole life under watchful eyes, under rules that broke her people. But this human had acted as if no fear could touch him. In the hidden control chamber above, the officers argued louder. The seed spreads, the story is out already. The lower decks whisper it, as if it were sacred, one officer hissed. They call the human a protector, a giver, a leader, another said, his tone sharp with concern. The elder officer sat in silence, his glowing eyes fixed on the image of Daniel. Finally he spoke. You do not understand. This is not just about food. This is about the ancient warning. The younger officer tilted his head. You mean the prophecy? The elder nodded slowly. Yes, the prophecy of the outsiders who would awaken the forgotten fire, the bond that can break our chains. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to ignore the stares that followed him all day. He carried boxes, scanned goods, stacked shelves, but the silence around him was heavier than the boxes. No one spoke to him. No one laughed. No one dared. He could feel tension building, like the moments before a storm. When his shift ended, he noticed the same group of rough alien youths waiting near the doors again. Their eyes burned with anger. Their voices hissed in words he did not understand, but the meaning was clear. They saw his kindness as a threat. They saw it as weakness, and weakness was punished. Solari knew it too. She had lived under this cruel order for years. When she came to the store again that evening, she carried her child on her hip, trying to look smaller, less visible. But the stares followed her, whispers biting at her ears. Some aliens looked at her with envy, others with disgust, and a few with something stranger, something like longing. One old alien woman touched her arm softly and whispered, Is it true? Did the human really give you food? Solari froze, her throat dry, but Lyra spoke before she could answer. Yes. He is kind, he is not like them. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest. Then perhaps there is still hope. Daniel saw the exchange and his jaw tightened again. He knew this was no longer a secret. The story was spreading faster than he could control. He bagged their food quietly, his strong hand steady even as the air around him buzzed with suspicion. When Solari tried once more to offer him her last coins, he pushed them back across the counter. Keep it, he said firmly. Your child needs more than credits. She needs to live. Solari lowered her eyes, whispering, You are putting yourself in danger. They will come for you. I cannot let you suffer because of us. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but sharp like a blade. Then let them come. I have faced worse than their shadows. The child smiled, her silver eyes glowing again, brighter this time. The light spread across the small shop, casting reflections on the glass doors and the shelves. Customers gasped, stepping back in fear, whispering words like prophecy, forbidden, and awakening. Daniel felt the heat of the glow, but he did not move away. He only nodded as if this moment was meant to happen. Solari held her daughter close, whispering, Hide your gift. Little one, hide it. But Lyra shook her head. He is not afraid, Mama. Why should I hide? Far above, the council chamber buzzed with voices. This cannot continue. If the child awakens, the others will follow. The order will fall apart. One counselor shouted, another argued. And if the human is the one foretold, the one who can unlock what we have tried to bury, then perhaps we should not silence him, perhaps we should use him. The elder officer rose slowly, his cloak dragging across the cold metal floor. We must not act in haste. If the human is truly dangerous, then he will reveal himself soon. And if he is what the prophecy speaks of, then the galaxy itself may be turning against us. Daniel walked home again that night, the bag lighter in his arms, but his heart heavier with every step. He passed the same corners, the same shadows, but now he knew the watchers were real. He could almost feel them following him, silent, patient, waiting for him to make another move. He reached his small apartment and sat in the dark, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, he felt like his life was no longer just about survival. He felt like he had stepped into something larger, something dangerous, something that could not be undone. Solari sat with her daughter, the small one curled against her chest. She remembered the way the human had spoken, the way he had said, "No one touches you while I am here." Those words burned in her mind, stronger than any law, stronger than any threat from the overseers. For so long she had believed her people were doomed, broken, scattered across the stars. But now, for the first time, she wondered if her daughter's words were true. Maybe humans were different. Maybe this one man could change everything. But change always comes with a price. In the shadows of the station, the overseers prepared to move. Drones whispered to each other in metallic tones. Soldiers armed their weapons. And far away in the dark heart of the council chamber, a decision was forming. One officer's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Tomorrow, we test the human. If he survives, then we will know." The elder officer's eyes narrowed, his gaze locked on the frozen image of Daniel. The storm was no longer coming, it had already begun. And in the middle of it, a human, a mother, and a child walked unknowingly into history. The colony's lights flickered that night, dim and uneasy. Rumors had already spread across every level of the city, carried from worker to worker, from child to child. The story of one human cashier who gave food to an alien mother was whispered in markets, in factories, in the cold dormitories where the forgotten slept. Some called him a fool, others called him a rebel, but many began to call him something far more dangerous, a symbol. Daniel sat in his small apartment above the store, staring out the narrow window at the endless void beyond the glass dome. The stars seemed closer tonight, brighter, almost alive. He thought of Solari and little Lyra, and the way the girl's silver eyes had glowed when she whispered, "Humans are different." The words would not leave him. They echoed in his chest, pressing against the silence until it hurt. He did not want to be anyone's hero. He had lost that role long ago when war stole his own child, and yet in that moment he felt something return, something he thought was gone forever. Purpose far above, the council chamber filled with cold voices. They are already repeating his name. It spreads faster than fire. One counselor growled, his claws drumming against the black stone table. Another hissed, "If the humans awaken the old bond, our rule will shatter. The chains we placed will break." The elder officer raised his hand, his voice low and calm. "No, it is not the human alone. It is the connection, the child, the mother, the human heart. It is more powerful than our weapons." The chamber fell into silence, and for the first time in centuries, fear touched the faces of the rulers. Down in the market, the mother held her daughter's hand as they walked once more. She tried to hide her fear, but whispers followed her everywhere. "Is that her, the one the human saved? She carries the bread. Look," the child smiles now. The mother wanted to vanish, to disappear into the shadows, but she could not hide her daughter's glow. Every time Lyra looked at the human, her eyes lit brighter, as if something ancient inside her had awakened, and those who saw it whispered even more. The child is changing, the prophecy, the fire. Daniel noticed the tension building. He noticed the groups of aliens watching him with sharp eyes. He also noticed something else. Others were starting to nod at him, small gestures of respect, almost hidden. A worker slipped him a piece of fruit with a whisper, "For the child." Another, an old alien man with scars, pressed a hand to his chest. a silent gesture of thanks. Daniel was not sure what to do. He was only a cashier, only a man trying to survive one day at a time. But now he felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, waiting, hoping, watching him. That night, the overseers made their move. The same drones that had watched in silence now gathered, their red eyes glowing like stars falling from the sky. Soldiers in dark armor descended from transports, their boots striking the metal ground. The air filled with tension, with fear. With the sound of weapons being loaded, Solari woke with a start, clutching her daughter as shadows moved outside their container. Her heart pounded, her breath caught. She whispered, "They are here. They have come." The child pressed her, glowing eyes shut, whispering, "He will come, Mama," he promised. And then, as if summoned by those words, Daniel appeared. He stood at the entrance, his broad frame outlined by the dim light of the street.